Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslock talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a three. And in this particular video, I want to talk about finding good research topics for your doctorate and looking for black swans. So, if you don't know me, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that helped me out to get through graduate school that I decided to pay the favor for it and help you out with these YouTube videos. I also created this sort of sharing economy proofreading app that we're still working on and getting the kinks worked out of it. But anyways, so how do you find these good research topics for your doctorate? And so there's two kind of views that you might take. And one is a lot more counterintuitive than the other one. The first one is, in terms of finding a good research topic, is you kind of do a very rational process, a very rational calculation, where you are digging down and finding the best possible research topic or the best possible topic to do a particular thing, right? So you might go and follow the normal process of maybe you go to the best school, for example, and then you find the best supervisor. And then from there, you find the best research topics that resonate with that particular supervisor or advisor, your principal investigator, whoever it is. And then from there, you go on and you're off to the races and you just continue to do all of the best possible research topics because these are the ones that maybe they have the highest impact potential, for example, and maybe they have the highest relevance to other particular areas, or maybe it's a research topic that is currently very hot. So there's trends in science. I don't know if you know that, but that does happen a lot, that there is a lot of trends. So for a couple of years, something might be really, really interesting and everybody's interested in that. And then say 3 or 4 years later, it's no longer interesting and people sort of move on to something else. It happens rapidly. It happens all the time. And so what you're trying to do with this rational process is you're trying to look for, okay, this is the thing that's really exciting and everybody is interested in this particular thing. Let's jump on it and then let's run and let's sort of work on that one particular thing, and then we're going to become famous from working on that particular thing. So I'm actually going to suggest something completely different than this very rational process, and that you should look for sort of irrational things and bet on the highly improbable. So there's two books that I've read recently in the last 6 months that have been very influential. One of them I knew about for a long time, and I finally got around to reading it. The first one is Sapiens, and it talks about the sort of evolutionary process that we have, or individuals or humans have had over the years. Very interesting. It's like Guns, Germs, and Steels. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's kind of like an extension. It goes into a lot more in depth. It's a really wonderful book. Sapiens talks about the evolutionary process. The second one that's very interesting and is very rewarding to read is Nassim Taleb's Black Swan book. And it's all about, so if you don't know who Nassim Taleb is, he was a trader. Now he works, I think, at New York Polytechnic, I believe, and he teaches there. And he has this wonderful book about black swans. Now it's about 10 years old, but it's also very relevant because it's talking about, if you don't know the whole process or what it's actually talking about, it talks about how the world is very random, and that there's a lot of different random events that happen around us, and that some of these random events are generating very large, sort of highly improbable events. So I actually do research on this kind of stuff, so that's why I'm interested in it. And so really what it is, it's sort of thinking, so normally we think about randomness as being generated in sort of a bell curve kind of way, right? So in a classroom that we are going to have an average in the classroom. However, most things around the world, most sort of natural events are not really random in that sort of sense. They happen very kind of oddly, in the sense that there might be some sort of event that is very, very outlandish, that drives a lot of behavior very, very quickly. So it's completely outside of our predictability. It's not something we can even sort of anticipate. And it drives a lot of behavior and going in one particular direction, or we think that this event was anticipated from, after we look at it, we're like, oh yeah, this event would have happened. We would have thought that this particular thing would happen. But in general, it's an outlying event that is just completely improbable, and we can't predict that particular thing from happening. So my point is with this is that research and science is very much along this kind of way. In fact, he talks about it in the book, that there are these highly improbable events that happen that change the way that we understand science. And one of the examples was the invention of the laser. When the person actually invented the inventor of the laser invented it, they were just doing it because they thought it was a really interesting topic that they really liked. And that drove them to continue to work at the laser. They didn't see all of the implications from actually inventing this particular laser. Same with the penicillin, for example, right? We didn't see when Fleming invented penicillin, he didn't sort of see the larger implications of that until much later on. It's like anything that happens in science, you don't really understand what the implications are of that particular project until you've actually worked on it for a very long time. So some people can anticipate some of those, some sort of near-term events or near-term outcomes and sort of say, okay, this is going to be hot and this is going to drive a lot of interest. But in the long run, we don't really know what is going to be a really popular sort of interesting topic that people are going to latch onto and it's going to become a big thing. It's really hard to sort of figure out those particular events, those particular outcomes and sort of scientific discoveries by sort of thinking about it beforehand. This option of thinking about the world is very random and it's driven by these very highly improbable events where there's something sort of tremendous happens that changes the world. It is a lot different than sort of thinking about things in a very random process. So what you want to do instead is find research topics, find good research topics that you are interested in and that are currently part of your life. So this would mean that you just simply go and look for things that are currently already part of your life. Maybe that there is a certain surrounding that you're in that you really enjoy or you really like to be in. So you like biking, mountain biking, for example. Well, then that is a good thing to research. There's a whole bunch that we don't know about mountain biking, for example, and the culture of mountain biking. If you're thinking about it from a business perspective or industry perspective, or even just the science of it, how it actually works, right? It's pretty interesting stuff. How, maybe you look at airflow, for example, in computational fluid dynamics of bicycle racing. That's a really interesting topic, right? Or maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure. Maybe you look at thin films around the tires and see how that behaves. That might be a really interesting topic as well. But, in general, what you're looking for is something that can sustain your interest for a long time. Because if you can sustain your interest for a long time, that's something that matters for you, you have a higher chance of sort of stumbling into something that's a really random, you have a higher chance of sort of experiencing one of these improbable events that is going to generate into, have a paper that's going to take off. And that research topic is of interest to other people. So you might generate a lot of duds, or you sort of explore in this particular area for a long time. And then every once in a while, you have a paper that is going to take off and lots of people are going to cite that particular paper, right? So you're looking for something that can sustain your interest, because the worst possible thing to sort of think about in terms of research topics is to do something that is very rational and that you're kind of like, oh, I'm doing this just because I'm making money from it, or I'm going to get famous from it. It's not going to sustain your interest very long. So what you're looking for is sustain your interest, to know that the data generating process in the background is very, very random, and that there's lots of kind of weird outlying events that happens. And if you do that, then you're going to choose something different, something that you really love to do. So that's part of the reason why I do these YouTube videos, is because I don't know what's actually going to happen with it. In the whole reciprocity project, the reason why I started it, it was kind of just, it was a large bet on something that I think is really important, that needs to be done. Nobody else is doing this kind of stuff. That there is lots of people that are looking for advice with all of this kind of stuff, and they don't know where to turn to. So I thought, well, I'm just going to do some of these YouTube videos. And there was a tool that I needed and I wanted to start working on with the whole reciprocity tool. So I just decided, well, I'm going to start working on that. And that's how these things get started. It's a random process. Hopefully somebody will stumble across these videos and say, well, that's really cool. I'm either going to, use it, or, I'm going to help out in some sort of way. Maybe, I'm a developer and I really want to help out and pitch in with this particular thing. So I acknowledge that this is, and what the hard thing is with it is that lots of people are, watch this kind of stuff or watch my behavior, and they might not like it, right? So you might get lots of thumbs down, or they just, think that people, and why are you doing this kind of thing, right? It doesn't make sense. You're kind of wasting your time doing YouTube videos, making like $1 a day off of YouTube videos. Well, yeah, it's a waste of time, but there are these moments, or it makes me, I very much enjoy the process. So hopefully the same with you, is that you would very much enjoy the process of doing your research and doing the thing that you're doing, and that you can sustain what you're doing because it is a really fun thing for you, right? Now, you also want to look for opportunities to take advantage of chance events, right? So this means that every once in a while, you probably should be going out and meeting people that are just completely random or outside of your research area. And I believe Herbert Simon used to do this. He was a Nobel laureate, very influential in a lot of different fields, and influential to my research. But anyways, he would just meet up with random people that were in different research areas and just have discussions with them. And that's what you should be doing too, is just talking to people and seeing how they view the world, and sort of absorbing and trying to make sense of what they're seeing and interpret what they're seeing to, to give you some influence. And hopefully that's going to influence your ideas and change your ideas and make it a little bit more straightforward, right? So if you're talking about your research ideas and people can understand what you're doing, then, if many people can understand what you're doing, then it's likely that you're onto something that's interesting, and other people are going to be interested in that particular thing. So you want to look for these sort of random chance events. Again, these YouTube videos is a perfect example. I know that there's, tens of thousands of people that are watching these every single month, and somebody's going to stumble across it and think that's a really cool idea and help out somehow, and, find these kind of opportunities. Or they might just think, this is silly, but at the same time, I don't know. It's kind of a random process that's generating all of these kind of, it's a random process with sort of generating the opportunities to find new research areas and things like that. So a third thing that's going to be really important for you when you are looking for these particular black swans in terms of good research topics for your doctorate is to ignore people that are saying that your particular idea that you came up with is a stupid idea. They just simply don't understand what you're talking about, and they don't see it in terms of the way that you are seeing it right now. And so there's two problems with that. The first one is you're not really clear with what you're saying with your own research topic, with what you're trying to communicate, that kind of thing that's interesting to you inside. And then you're not projecting or not explaining to the other person and making them interested and sort of figuring out what's interesting to them in terms of this particular topic that you're working on, right? So you might be interested in, maybe it's paint drying, right? Like there's nothing more boring than watching paint dry, right? But maybe you're a chemist and you really want to understand how paint dries, because if you can get paint to dry faster, that it can save companies a lot of money, for example, or that there's going to be less environmental impact from paint if it dries faster because it doesn't smell as much, right, in your house. And so if you can communicate these benefits and these impacts to other people to say, well, you know what, watching paint dry is actually really interesting because, X, Y, and Z things happen, and it has this large impact on society because we can get even 1,000 people using this fast drying paint that I'm inventing or that I'm working on, then we can reduce carbon emissions by X amount, or volatile organic compounds by X amount. Or if you have children in your house, you're going to want to use this kind of paint that I'm working on because it's a lot less toxic, and there's no lead in it, and it's actually your kids can eat it and it's going to be healthy for them, right? So you want to look for these ways to motivate and have them understand what you're trying to talk about. So the first thing is you got to find out why you're interested in it. So there's a reason why you're interested in that particular thing that you're interested in, and you're not clear on why that is just yet inside of you. But the other thing is to get the other person to sort of understand why you're interested in that particular thing, and really nail down on that thing that you're interested in, sort of communicate that to the other person in terms of their interests. And, everybody is self-interested. Everybody is motivated by their own independent interests, and you have to sort of resonate with those independent interests with other people. So it's like being a company, right, where you're trying to communicate with other people, and people are just not going to be excited about the particular product that you're working on, but they have to sort of see what's in it for them on their side and sort of sell that particular topic to them. So you have to ignore when people say, that's a really stupid idea. Every idea that was ever good was a stupid idea. Every single one. And it all just takes a lot of time and work. And that goes to my fourth sort of topic and sort of idea is if you take the view that the topics that we have and the research topics that we have is generated by sort of a lot of randomness, that means that good research topics are going to be generated in an evolutionary fashion. So it's going to take a lot of time. You're not going to be able to just come up with that wonderful idea at the beginning, like the sort of rational view is, and then you're just going to pursue that particular idea. There's going to be a lot of things that change, a lot of sort of issues that come up, and you have to address those things, and it continuously adapts. And so what you have to do is take the feedback that you're getting from other people and absorb it and sort of change the idea. And you're like, oh, yeah, actually, I never thought about that. That was a really cool idea that that particular person suggested. And I'm going to refine it and build it and then address what they're saying. So it's kind of like the analogy, a good analogy is if you see a dancer or if you see like a good fighter, like a boxer, that kind of stuff. They kind of dance, right? Like they're not just punching or they're not just dancing to themselves. But if somebody responds or they make if they make an aggressive attack or that they make a mistake, the partner makes a mistake, then you respond to that, you absorb it, and then you kind of do this kind of thing and you keep going and you work with that particular topic, right? So that's the same thing when you have a really dumb research topic that is really dumb. We all have them. You gotta you communicate that really dumb, sort of silly research topic to somebody else, and then you say that, well, that's really stupid. Well, when they say that, you ask them, like, why do you think that? So then you're like, oh, I'm gonna absorb that thing and reframe it such that it addresses that particular topic. So the idea hasn't changed, but you're just reinterpreting, you're getting their interest, right? So they are being self-interested. They don't see that particular view. You're absorbing what that self-interested is and then reframing it such that it meets that interest, if that makes any sense, right? So you're kind of doing one of these things and coming back and reframing the idea to sort of match what they're trying to do. And believe me, it's tricky, but it actually makes sense when you do that, when you're like, oh yeah, that was really dumb. Let me reframe it such that I can readdress what they're saying, right? So maybe you're doing, coming back to drying paint, watching paint dry. So you go talk to somebody and you say, well, I'm doing research on paint that dries. And they're like, well, that's really dumb. Well, then you're like, oh, well, can you explain to me why you think it's really dumb? And they might say, well, that's just really boring, right? Like that's the quintessential boring thing to say is watching paint dry. Well, then you say, oh yeah, you know what? No, you don't get it. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. When paint dries, it gives off volatile organic compounds, which makes you sick. But if we can address this, we can reduce the amount of volatile organic compounds and make sure that everybody else is better off. And your kids are going to be better off when you do that. And so you see how it sort of flips it around and you address that. And you could even take that a little bit further. You could say, well, I'm working on paint that is really safe for kids such that they can actually eat it and it's going to make them better off, right? I'm working on research that is paint for kids and they can eat it. So if you sort of change it and you sort of absorb what they're saying and come back to them, it makes a lot more sense. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to think about it as well. So don't be afraid if it takes a little bit of time for you to sit down and think about it. So hopefully you really like this video. Give me a thumbs up if you do. I do appreciate it because then I can do more videos about what you actually like. And do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do appreciate it. All right, take care. Bye.